Footsteps echo down empty halls. A cold breath stirs the silent walls. Shadows twist beneath the moonlight. Secrets wait just out of sight. Every heartbeat feels the warning. Night unfolds its ancient warning. In the mist they whisper names, calling out through hollow frames. Lost between the veil and truth, drawn inside the endless ruse. Eyes behind the glass keep watching. Walls breathe secrets never stopping. Feel the pull beneath your skin, where the nightmare once begins. Footsteps fade into the night, leaving echoes of the fright. Whispers linger in the air, haunting you when you're not there.
Murder on the Express, a novel by Dane Clark. The Amtrak Express heaved out of Penn Station beneath a ceiling of gray cloud and steel. Its horn bellowed twice, a lonely, echoing note swallowed by the canyon of Manhattan's concrete walls. Inside, the train shuddered, adjusted, and began its long journey west. Detective Jiggs Williams scowled at the rhythmic rattle of the wheels. "I hate trains," he muttered, tugging the brim of his battered fedora lower over his eyes. "They always smell like wet carpet and bad coffee." Across from him, Sarah Meechan, his much younger partner, grinned. "They also don't fall out of the sky, sir. Count your blessings." "Blessings," Jiggs snorted, "don't come with strangers breathing down your neck for 48 hours straight." He leaned back against the window, watching the last flashes of Manhattan slip by. The graffiti-scarred walls, the glint of office windows, the smear of tail lights. Soon there would be nothing but planes and silence. A long iron artery cutting across the continent. Sarah checked the itinerary pinned to her notebook. 2.5 days, New York to Los Angeles. 7 major stops. We'll make Chicago by tomorrow evening. Assuming the engineer can keep his foot on the throttle. The announcement crackled through the overhead speaker. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard the Express. Dining service will begin in 30 minutes. Please remain seated while we clear the East River Tunnel." Sarah smiled. "See? Already sounds civilized." "Civilized," Jiggs said, "until someone snaps." He didn't know then how close to the truth he was.
At 12:47 a.m., a scream tore through the sleeping car. Sarah bolted upright in her berth. "What the?" Jiggs was already pulling on his jacket. "That came from Car C." They raced down the narrow corridor as passengers stumbled out of their rooms. The conductor, Erdrich Wilson, was already there, fumbling with a master key at the door of cabin 14B. The door swung open. Simon Knowles sat slumped in his chair, eyes glassy, a butcher knife buried to the hilt in his chest. The handle gleamed under the reading light. Blood had soaked his shirt and pooled onto the carpet. Sarah froze, hand to her mouth. "Oh my God." Jiggs crouched, studying the scene with grim precision. The door had been locked from the inside. The window, however, was cracked open to the rushing night. "The knife's from the dining car," Jiggs muttered. "That's no kitchen accident." Erdrich Wilson's voice shook. "I swear I just saw him an hour ago. He asked for extra towels. Looked fine." Jiggs rose slowly, eyes scanning every corner of the small cabin. Papers scattered, a half-drunk glass of whiskey, faint smears of grease on the door frame. "Sarah," he said, "we've got ourselves a murder, and a train full of suspects who can't go anywhere." Outside, the wheels thundered westward through the darkness, carrying the living and the dead toward dawn. Snow blurred the windows of the Amtrak Express as it cut through western Pennsylvania, a silver serpent slicing the white night. The murder of Congressman Simon Knowles had turned the sleeper car into a pressure cooker of whispers, fear, and denial. The killer was somewhere on board, and until the train stopped, no one could get off. Detective Jiggs Williams stood in the corridor outside cabin 14B, his shoulders filling the narrow space. He was silent for a long moment, watching the medical officer the crew had hastily called from among the passengers. The man shook his head once and zipped the congressman into a body bag. Sarah Meechan hovered by the door with her notebook open, her neat handwriting already dense with observations. "Time of death?" she asked softly. "Between 11 and midnight," said the doctor. "He was stabbed cleanly, one blow, straight to the heart. Whoever did it knew exactly where to strike." Jiggs grunted. "A prose touch, or a crime of passion lucky enough to land right." He crouched beside the table where Knowles's papers still lay scattered. Briefs, speeches, memos stamped confidential. One page caught his eye. A printed email, the top line reading, "R.E. Payments and silence." He tucked it into an evidence envelope. "Sarah, we'll need to talk to his staff, all of them." "Already got a list," she said, flipping to a new page. "Roger Thorne, Benny Melio, Jenny Watkin, Tom Rice, Benjamin Jones, Jacob Reinhardt, Teresa Honkow, Daisy Thomas, and the conductor, Erdrich Wilson." "Good," Jiggs rose. "Lock this cabin down. No one gets in or out. We'll start interviews in the lounge car." The lounge had been emptied of casual travelers and turned into an impromptu interrogation chamber. The long curved windows showed only the blur of night in snow. The overhead lights burned harshly against tense faces. Erdrich Wilson, the conductor, stood at attention near the bar, wringing his cap. He was a thin man with years of discipline in his posture, but fear had crept into his eyes. "Mr. Wilson," Sarah began kindly, "you were on duty when the murder occurred. Where were you between 11 and midnight?" "In the rear cars," he said quickly. "Ticket verification and safety checks. I only came through first class at 12:15. Heard the scream maybe a minute later." "Did you see anyone near 14B before that?" He hesitated. "Congressman Knowles had visitors throughout the evening. His staff came and went, but I saw Mr. Melio in the corridor around 10:30, and Miss Watcon left his cabin not long after." Sarah's pencil stilled. "Thank you, Mr. Wilson." Jiggs nodded toward the guards they'd deputized. "Keep him nearby." Roger Thorne entered next, composed but pale. His suit was immaculate, his tie still straight. A man who held on to professionalism even when the world collapsed around him. "Mr. Thorne," Jiggs said, "you were the congressman's chief of staff?" "For 7 years. You know his enemies?" Thorne gave a thin smile. "You'd need another train car for that list." Sarah leaned forward. "Where were you tonight?" "In my cabin, drafting press responses on my laptop. You can check the timestamps." "We will." Jiggs folded his arms. "Did you hear anything unusual?" "Only that the congressman argued with Benny Melio earlier," Thorne said. "It was about security protocols, or maybe about Jenny. He didn't say much to me afterward." Sarah watched him closely. You seem calm for someone whose boss was just murdered. He met her gaze evenly. I've worked in Washington for 15 years, detective. Shock is a luxury we don't get. Jiggs studied him another moment before waving him away. Next. When Benny entered, the air seemed to tighten. He was tall, thick through the chest and shoulders, his face carved in stone. He stood with hands behind his back, the posture of a soldier forced into a suit. Mr. Melio, Sarah began, you were responsible for the congressman's personal safety. Yeah. Then how did someone manage to kill him? Jiggs asked. Melio's jaw flexed. He told me to take the night off, said he wanted privacy. When your employer insists, you don't argue. Where were you? In the dining car, talking with the chef. You can ask him. We will, said Jiggs. One more thing. You and Jenny Watcon, what's your relationship? Melio's eyes flashed. That's personal. So's murder, Jiggs said flatly.
The train groaned to a halt in the middle of nowhere. The headlights carved twin tunnels through the blizzard, and snowflakes streaked like stars in warp speed before slamming into the glass. All along the cars, passengers murmured anxiously. The air carried the metallic tang of panic and coffee. Jiggs Williams pulled his coat tighter and moved toward the vestibule between cars. Sarah Meechan followed, her notebook in one hand, flashlight in the other. The cold hit them like a physical blow when the outer door opened. God, Sarah said, breath visible in the freezing air. Where are we? Somewhere in Indiana, maybe Illinois, Jiggs said, glancing toward the rail signals swallowed by snow. We're miles from any station. Someone wanted this stop. He knelt near the tracks, scanning with the beam of his flashlight. A dark shape lay half-buried near the rail. Sarah crouched beside him. What is that? He brushed away snow and pulled free a long strip of torn fabric. It was navy blue with a brass button hanging by a thread. Train conductor's jacket, he said quietly. Sarah's breath caught. Airdrek Wilson. Jiggs didn't answer immediately. He turned the fabric over in his hands. The button matched the one she'd found near Knowles' door. Either he's being framed or he's very careless. By the time they climbed into the engine car, the warmth of the cab was a blessing. The engineer, a thick-set man with tired eyes, looked up from the control panel. We hit something, he said before Jiggs could ask. I thought it was debris, but when I went to look, there was nothing. Nothing? Sarah repeated. Tracks are clear, but the emergency brake was triggered manually from the rear service car. Could the conductor do that? Jiggs asked. Yes, or anyone with his key. Jiggs exchanged a glance with Sarah. Wilson again. Where is he now? She asked the engineer. Back checking the cars, I think. Then we find him, Jiggs said, before he finds us. They located Wilson 10 minutes later near the baggage car, lantern in hand. The snow plastered his uniform and his teeth chattered. He looked genuinely terrified. Detectives, thank God, he said. Someone's tampered with the brake system. I swear I didn't. Jiggs cut him off. We found a piece of your uniform near the
murder scene, and another on the tracks. Want to explain that? Wilson blinked, then turned pale. My jacket was stolen. I left it hanging in the staff closet earlier tonight. I thought maybe one of the stewards borrowed it. Convenient, Jiggs said. Who had access? All crew, Wilson said, but mostly Benny Melio. He said he needed a uniform jacket for security reasons. I didn't think anything of it. Sarah scribbled quickly. When was that? About 10 o'clock. Right before the estimated time of death, Jiggs muttered, and right before the emergency brake was triggered. Wilson looked from one to the other, desperate. I didn't kill him, detective. I'm being set up. Jiggs stared into his frightened eyes, searching for deceit. We'll see. By dawn, the snow had stopped, leaving the world a white silence. The train had been cleared to continue, but Jiggs ordered it to remain until his investigation finished. Passengers grew restless, crowding the lounge for updates. The dining car, once bustling with campaign chatter, now felt like a morgue. Jiggs stood by the counter where the knife set hung, minus one long butcher's knife. The empty slot gleamed accusingly. Sarah joined him, holding a steaming cup of coffee. Chef says the knife went missing around 10. He thought Benny had borrowed it for security demonstration. Jiggs frowned. That's twice Benny's name's come up. 3 times, Sarah said. Jenny said she went to him after the argument. He took a long sip of coffee, thinking. A security chief with access to weapons, uniforms, and keys. Motive, love, jealousy, loyalty, opportunity, all night long. But would he really stab the man who paid his salary? Depends on what that salary was buying, Jiggs said. Sarah had been combing through Knowles's laptop for hours. Finally, she looked up. Jiggs, I found something. He came over. On the screen was a folder named Pacific Account. Inside were bank statements showing large transfers to offshore accounts and one marked Melio Holdings, LLC. Jiggs whistled. When Jiggs confronted Roger Thorne again, the man was no longer smooth and controlled. He sat in the lounge, face pale, jacket undone, hands shaking slightly as he tried to light a cigarette. I don't smoke, Thorne muttered. Never have. Guess stress changes things. Tell me about your visit to Knowles's cabin, Jiggs said. Thorne closed his eyes. He called me in, said we needed to clean house, that Reinhardt and Jones were liabilities. I told him if he started throwing people overboard, it'd look suspicious. Sarah leaned against the table. And then? He told me I'd be next if I didn't follow orders. So you killed him, Jiggs said. No, Thorne snapped. I left, I swear. But when I walked out, Benny was coming down the corridor wearing a conductor's jacket. I thought it was strange, but I didn't ask. Sarah's eyes widened. Benny in a conductor's jacket. Wilson said the same. Jiggs scribbled something in his notebook. You didn't see anyone else? No, just Benny. Would you be willing to swear that in writing? Thorne looked up sharply. Why? You think I'm lying? I think everyone's lying, Jiggs said. I'm just sorting who's the best at it. By evening, the bar car was crowded. Passengers who weren't suspects tried to drown their fear in whiskey. Those who were pretended not to care. The clink of glasses was nervous and uneven. Sarah leaned on the counter beside the conductor, Wilson, who looked utterly drained. Rough day? He nodded. They think I'm involved. Me. I've been on the rails 20 years. Never even seen a fight, let alone a murder. You said Benny borrowed your jacket, Sarah said. Did you see him return it? Wilson shook his head. No. Found it back in the closet after the murder. Figured he hung it up. Sarah frowned. But you didn't see him wearing it again? No. So someone else could have used it. He blinked. You mean, framed both of us? Maybe, she said. Or maybe someone used your jacket to get close enough to the victim without suspicion. Wilson rubbed his face. You think Thorne? Sarah did. Thorne's hands trembled slightly as he set down his fork. There was an internal dispute, all right? Reinhardt wanted out. Simon wouldn't let him. I tried to mediate. By moving money through dummy accounts, Jiggs asked. No, Thorne said quickly, by making sure nobody noticed, for the good of the campaign. Sarah's gaze was steady. And for the good of Roger Thorne? Thorne looked away. If I went down, so did everyone. You don't understand what that kind of power does to people. Oh, Jiggs said dryly, I understand just fine. By late morning, the staff car had erupted into arguments. Tom Rice, the campaign manager, paced like a caged animal. Benjamin Jones sat slumped with a flask, muttering under his breath. Daisy Thomas, the young intern, stared out the window, trying not to cry. You don't get it, Rice barked. Reinhardt's confession solves nothing. The donors are spooked and the press will crucify us. Benjamin Jones snorted. Maybe they should. Knowles was dirty as they come. Tom spun. Watch your mouth. Or what? You'll stage another fundraiser in his name? The man laundered half his campaign through phantom charities. Sarah and Jiggs entered quietly, catching the tail end of the exchange. Sounds like you all have plenty of motives, Sarah said. Who wants to start explaining? Daisy turned, voice trembling. Detective, please, this has gone too far. I saw Jacob's arrest. He wasn't the only one sneaking around that night. Who else? Jiggs asked. She hesitated, glancing at Rice and Jones. Mr. Thorne came out of Simon's cabin earlier. Around 10, he looked angry, sweating. Rice groaned. Daisy, for God's sake. She's telling the truth, Benjamin Jones said. I saw it too. Thorne was white as a sheet. He told me to keep my mouth shut if I knew what was good for me. Sarah and Jiggs exchanged a look. Seems like Mr. Thorne's got more explaining to do, Jiggs said. Jenny Watcon had barricaded herself in her cabin. When Sarah knocked, there was a long pause before the door cracked open. Jenny looked fragile, pale, eyes rimmed red. I can't keep doing this, she said. Every time I close my eyes, I see him. Sarah. Only Jiggs Williams and Sarah Meechan remained awake, plotting the next move. A half-empty coffee pot steamed on the low table between them, and an evidence envelope sat in Jiggs's lap like a loaded weapon. Inside it lay the photograph, the one Sarah had found wedged behind Knowles's headboard earlier that evening. A candid shot, blurred slightly, showing Simon Knowles, Teresa Honkow, and Roger Thorne at a private gala, champagne in hand, faces too close for politics. Sarah rubbed her eyes. She said she barely knew him. That photo says otherwise. Politicians lie, Jiggs said flatly, but staffers lie better. He rose, stretching, the joints in his knees cracking softly. If Jones is telling the truth, Teresa went back to that cabin after Thorne left. That puts her at the scene within minutes of the murder. Sarah nodded. And if she dumped the knife down the chute, we'll never recover it without stopping the train. We don't need the knife, Jiggs said. We need her story to break.
Jenny Watcon had barricaded herself in her cabin. When Sarah knocked, there was a long pause before the door cracked open. Jenny looked fragile, pale, eyes rimmed red. I can't keep doing this, she said. Every time I close my eyes, I see him. Sarah entered gently. Jenny, I need you to think carefully. You said you argued with Simon that night. Did anyone come in after you left? She hesitated. Maybe. I heard voices when I was walking away. One sounded like Roger's, but I didn't look back. Sarah's pen paused. You're sure it was him? I think so. I know his voice anywhere. Why didn't you tell us before? Jenny looked down. Because Roger's been helping me. He promised to keep my pregnancy quiet. I was scared to lose that. Sarah's tone softened. You did the right thing telling me now. Jenny's lip trembled. Detective, you don't think he... Sarah didn't answer. She only put a hand on her shoulder. We'll find out.
When Jiggs confronted Roger Thorne again, the man was no longer smooth and controlled. He sat in the lounge, face pale, jacket undone, hands shaking slightly as he tried to light a cigarette. I don't smoke, Thorne muttered. Never have. Guess stress changes things. Tell me about your visit to Knowles's cabin, Jiggs said. Thorne closed his eyes. He called me in, said we needed to clean house, that Reinhardt and Jones were liabilities. I told him if he started throwing people overboard, it'd look suspicious. Sarah leaned against the table. And then? He told me I'd be next if I didn't follow orders. So you killed him, Jiggs said. No, Thorne snapped. I left, I swear. But when I walked out, Benny was coming down the corridor wearing a conductor's jacket. I thought it was strange, but I didn't ask. Sarah's eyes widened. Benny in a conductor's jacket. Wilson said the same. Jiggs scribbled something in his notebook. You didn't see anyone else? No, just Benny. Would you be willing to swear that in writing? Thorne looked up sharply. Why? You think I'm lying? I think everyone's lying, Jiggs said. I'm just sorting who's the best at it. By evening, the bar car was crowded. Passengers who weren't suspects tried to drown their fear in whiskey. Those who were pretended not to care. The clink of glasses was nervous and uneven. Sarah leaned on the counter beside the conductor, Wilson, who looked utterly drained. Rough day? He nodded. They think I'm involved. Me. I've been on the rails 20 years, never even seen a fight, let alone a murder. You said Benny borrowed your jacket, Sarah said. Did you see him return it? Wilson shook his head. No. Found it back in the closet after the murder. Figured he hung it up. Sarah frowned. But you didn't see him wearing it again? No. So someone else could have used it. He blinked. You mean, framed both of us? Maybe, she said. Or maybe someone used your jacket to get close enough to the victim without suspicion. Wilson rubbed his face. You think Thorne? Sarah didn't answer. She watched him pour a trembling shot instead. The train had left St. Louis by nightfall, heading toward Kansas City. Snow returned, soft, slow, endless. The rhythmic clatter of wheels filled the silence. Sarah found Jiggs staring out the observation window. You're quiet, she said. Thinking, he replied. Reinhardt confessed too easily. Thorne's story fills some holes, but not all. And Jenny's protection looks like blackmail dressed up as charity. Sarah sighed. And the bruise on Knowles' neck? Someone held him down while another stabbed him. 2 people, maybe 3. An inside job. He nodded. Which means the killer's still here. A voice from behind startled them both. You're right. It was Benjamin Jones, the policy advisor, his face pale and eyes sunken. He held a glass of bourbon, hand shaking. I can't keep this in, he said. I have to tell someone. Jiggs turned. Then tell me. Jones sank into a seat. I was there that night. I saw it happen. Sarah's pen froze. Saw what, exactly? Jones swallowed hard. Roger Thorne didn't kill him. Benny didn't either. It was Teresa. Teresa Honkow. She went in after Roger left. She said she needed a signature on a donor form, but she came out white as snow, clutching something. Later I saw her throw a knife into the kitchen chute. Jiggs's jaw tightened. Why didn't you say that before? Because she threatened me. Said if I talked, she'd ruin me. And she can. She knows things. Sarah's heart raced. Where is she now? Jones looked toward the far end of the car. Sleeping, I think. Cabin 10. Jiggs rose. Not for long. The Great Western Express hurtled through the snow-covered plains of Missouri under a moonless sky. The rhythm of the wheels had become hypnotic, a pulse that carried with it equal measures of dread and inevitability. Every few minutes the whistle shrieked, a lonely wail swallowed by the blizzard outside. In the lounge, the lights were dimmed, the bar closed. Only Jiggs Williams and Sarah Meechan remained awake, plotting the next move. A half-empty coffee pot steamed on the low table between them, and an evidence envelope sat in Jiggs's lap like a loaded weapon. Inside it lay the photograph, the one Sarah had found wedged behind Knowles' headboard earlier that evening. A candid shot, blurred slightly, showing Simon Knowles, Teresa Honkow, and Roger Thorne at a private gala, champagne in hand, faces too close for politics. Sarah rubbed her eyes. She said she barely knew him. That photo says otherwise. Politicians lie, Jiggs said flatly, but staffers lie better. He rose, stretching, the joints in his knees cracking softly. If Jones is telling the truth, Teresa went back to that cabin after Thorne left. That puts her at the scene within minutes of the murder. Sarah nodded. And if she dumped the knife down the chute, we'll never recover it without stopping the train. We don't need the knife, Jiggs said. We need her story to break. They made their way down the dark corridor. The train swayed, the rails groaning beneath the storm's weight. Cabin 10 was near the rear, a narrow berth with the door shut tight and a faint light showing beneath it. Sarah knocked. No answer. Jiggs knocked again, harder. Ms. Honkow, open up. We need a word. There was movement inside. The sound of drawers sliding, a muffled curse. Then the latch clicked. Teresa appeared in the doorway wearing a silk robe, hair slightly tousled, eyes sharp. Detective, Agent Meechan, it's after midnight. What is this? Routine follow-up, Jiggs said, stepping past her before she could object. The cabin smelled faintly of perfume and fear. We'll make it quick. Sarah shut the door behind them. We have new information about the night Simon Knowles died. Teresa folded her arms. If this is another attempt to smear me with baseless, Jiggs pulled the photograph from the envelope and laid it on the desk. That you? Her gaze dropped, and for the briefest second her composure cracked. Where did you get that? Behind Knowles's bed frame. Looks like you were friendly. Her jaw clenched. Simon and I attended dozens of events. That doesn't mean anything. Maybe, Jiggs said, except the timestamp on the back says 3 weeks ago, the night of the Denver fundraiser. You told us you hadn't seen him in a month. Teresa's fingers twitched at her robe's tie. I misspoke. You lied, Sarah said softly. Why? Teresa looked from one to the other, calculating. Because I knew how it would look. The congressman had enemies. I didn't want to become one more headline. Jiggs leaned closer. And yet you went back to his cabin that night. Why? I didn't. Benjamin Jones says otherwise. Says he saw you leave the room pale as death. Says you threw something down the galley chute afterward. Her lips parted, a faint tremor breaking her mask. Jones, he was drunk. He doesn't know what he saw. Then tell us what he saw, Sarah pressed. Teresa turned away, facing the frosted window. You wouldn't believe me if I told you. Try it. Back in the observation car, the storm was blinding. The train plowed on through white oblivion. Sarah leaned on the brass rail, lost in thought. Do you believe her? She asked. Jiggs lit a cigarette, cupping the flame from the draft. I believe parts of her. Enough to know she's still hiding something. The affair? Maybe. Or maybe she's covering for someone else. Jones, Thorne, Jenny. Take your pick. Sarah folded her arms. You think she's capable of murder? Everyone on this train is, Jiggs said. That's what makes it fun. He blew out smoke, watching it curl in the cold air. Tomorrow morning we'll pull into Kansas City. We can wire ahead for a forensics team. Until then, nobody sleeps. But someone did. At 3:17 a.m., the train jerked violently, brakes screeching. Passengers tumbled from bunks. The whistle blared once, twice, then fell silent. Sarah grabbed her coat and ran into the corridor. What the hell? Wilson, the conductor, was already sprinting from the front. Emergency stop. Someone pulled the brake cord. Jiggs came pounding after her. Who? I don't know, Wilson shouted, but we've lost pressure in the dining car. They pushed through the narrow passage, past startled faces, half-dressed passengers, until they reached the dining car. The door was open, swinging slightly. Inside, the lanterns flickered. Snow had blown in through a cracked window. And there, slumped against the far booth, was Benjamin Jones. Throat cut, eyes open, a spreading pool of dark beneath him. Sarah gasped. God, no. Jiggs crouched beside the body, jaw tight. He didn't kill himself. Wilson paled. How can you tell? Jiggs pointed to the bloody fingerprints smeared on the table. Because he was still trying to write something. Sarah leaned closer. There, scrawled in blood across the white linen, were 3 letters. J-E-N. By dawn, the train was moving again, crawling west under orders to stay sealed until Kansas City. Every passenger was confined to quarters. The aisles were patrolled by 2 state marshals who'd boarded at the last junction. In the staff compartment, Jenny Watcon sat pale and silent, hands bound lightly with cord. Precautionary restraint, Sarah had called it. Jiggs stood before her, the blood-stained napkin in his hand. Looks bad, doesn't it? He said. Jenny's eyes widened at the sight of her own name. I didn't. I swear I didn't touch him. Jones thought otherwise, Jiggs said. He used his dying breath to accuse you. Tears streamed down her face. He's wrong. He must be. Tell me where you were when the train stopped. I was asleep, in my cabin. Anyone can confirm that? She hesitated. Teresa came by earlier, said she wanted to talk, but she never showed. I waited, then fell asleep. Sarah crossed her arms. Teresa says you threatened Simon Knowles. Jenny froze. She said that? Yes. Said you promised to kill him if he betrayed you. Jenny's face twisted. She's lying. She hated me. She said I'd ruin everything. Jiggs studied her. Maybe you both hated each other enough to make it true. Jenny shook her head violently. No, I loved him. I loved Simon. He said he'd leave his wife. Her voice broke and she buried her face in her hands. Sarah's gaze softened. Jenny, did you go to his cabin that night? Yes, she whispered, but not to hurt him. I went to tell him I couldn't keep the baby. He promised he'd help me, but when I got there, he wasn't alone. Who was with him? Jiggs asked. She hesitated. Roger Thorne. Jiggs straightened. You're sure? Yes, they were arguing. Thorne said something about payments, about being exposed. Simon told him to calm down, said he'd handle it. Then Thorne stormed out. I waited in the corridor, and when I went in, Simon was gone. His drink was spilled, papers everywhere. What time was that? Sarah asked. Jenny's brow furrowed. Maybe 11:45? And you didn't see Teresa? No, I went.
Yes, he was going to blow it wide open, make himself a hero before the election. But Thorne and Melio, they couldn't let that happen. Sarah frowned, so they hired the fake conductor to handle it. Teresa's eyes glistened. You have no idea who you're dealing with. Westline doesn't lose people. It buries them. Jiggs tapped the table. Then they'll have to bury me deep. The train thundered west through the empty plains, a silver serpent cutting across a golden sea of wheat. Inside, the walls seemed to hum with unease, passengers whispering, staff avoiding eye contact, and the faint vibration of steel on steel, like a heartbeat that wouldn't slow down. Jiggs Williams sat in the observation lounge, the photograph from the fake conductor spread out before him. Sarah stood at the bar, sipping cold coffee, eyes scanning the reflection in the glass. You know what's funny? Jiggs said quietly. Every one of these faces, Knowles, Thorne, that mystery man, they're all smiling, like it was the best day of their lives. Sarah came over and leaned down. You think Westline's still active? Bet on it. Then whoever that third man is, he's the one still pulling the strings, Jiggs finished. Sarah nodded slowly. And Thorne's next on our list. Jiggs pocketed the photo and rose. Let's pay him a visit. The door was locked, but that meant little to Jiggs. He used a narrow blade to lift the latch and pushed it open. Thorne sat at the small desk, hair disheveled, a tumbler of whiskey trembling in his hand. His eyes darted up as they entered. "Detective," he said hoarsely. "I was expecting you." Jiggs gestured toward the glass. "Breakfast of champions?" Thorne gave a bitter laugh. "You'd drink too if your career was over before sunrise." Sarah crossed her arms. "Depends on who's ending it, you or whoever you're working for." Thorne sighed and stared out the window. "You think I killed Simon?" "You had motive, access, and nerves of steel," Jiggs said. "That's a good start." "I didn't touch him." Thorne's voice cracked. "I've done things for that man I'll never forgive myself for, but I didn't kill him." Sarah leaned forward. "Then tell us about Westline." Thorne froze. Yes, he was going to blow it wide open, make himself a hero before the election. But Thorne and Melio, they couldn't let that happen. Sarah frowned. "So they hired the fake conductor to handle it." Teresa's eyes glistened. "You have no idea who you're dealing with. Westline doesn't lose people. It buries them." Jiggs tapped the table. "Then they'll have to bury me deep." The train thundered west through the empty plains, a silver serpent cutting across a golden sea of wheat. Inside, the walls seemed to hum with unease, passengers whispering, staff avoiding eye contact, and the faint vibration of steel on steel, like a heartbeat that wouldn't slow down. Jiggs Williams sat in the observation lounge, the photograph from the fake conductor spread out before him. Sarah stood at the bar, sipping cold coffee, eyes scanning the reflection in the glass. "You know what's funny?" Jiggs said quietly. "Every one of these faces, Knowles, Thorne, that mystery man, they're all smiling, like it was the best day of their lives." Sarah came over and leaned down. "You think Westline's still active?" "Bet on it." "Then whoever that third man is, he's the one still pulling the strings," Jiggs finished. Sarah nodded slowly. "And Thorne's next on our list." Jiggs pocketed the photo and rose. "Let's pay him a visit." The door was locked, but that meant little to Jiggs. He used a narrow blade to lift the latch and pushed it open. Thorne sat at the small desk, hair disheveled, a tumbler of whiskey trembling in his hand. His eyes darted up as they entered. "Detective," he said hoarsely. "I was expecting you." Jiggs gestured toward the glass. "Breakfast of champions?" Thorne gave a bitter laugh. "You'd drink too if your career was over before sunrise." Sarah crossed her arms. "Depends on who's ending it, you or whoever you're working for." Thorne sighed and stared out the window. "You think I killed Simon?" "You had motive, access, and nerves of steel," Jiggs said. "That's a good start." "I didn't touch him." Thorne's voice cracked. "I've done things for that man I'll never forgive myself for, but I didn't kill him." Sarah leaned forward. "Then tell us about Westline." Thorne froze.
Because someone saw a man in a conductor's uniform leaving the dining car around that time. Wilson frowned. "Could have been anyone. We've got porters, attendants, but only one conductor," Sarah said. Wilson's eyes hardened. "You accusing me of something?" Jiggs studied him a long moment. The man's voice was right, but his eyes were wrong. Colder, heavier. "Just asking," Jiggs said finally. "You mind showing me your ID badge?" Wilson hesitated, just long enough to make Sarah's pulse quicken, then handed it over. The plastic card read Erdrich Wilson, Senior Conductor, Amtrak Midwest Division. Everything looked legitimate, except for one thing. The photo was slightly off-center, the lamination newer than the others Jiggs had seen. He handed it back. "Thank you." Wilson pocketed it quickly and turned away. "Now if you'll excuse me, I've got work to do." As he walked off, Sarah whispered, "You saw it too, didn't you?" Jiggs nodded. "That badge was printed yesterday." That evening, as the express crossed into Kansas Plains, Sarah and Jiggs set up temporary quarters in the lounge. They'd confiscated Knowles' briefcase from Kansas City PD before departure, a hard-won favor. Inside were campaign files, donor lists, encrypted USB drives, and a stack of folders marked Private RT. Roger Thorne, Sarah murmured. They opened the top file. Inside were wire transfer receipts, amounts in the tens of thousands routed from shell companies in Panama and Cyprus. Each payment listed consulting services. Each was countersigned by E. Wilson. Jiggs whistled softly. Erdrich Wilson's name is on every transfer, Sarah frowned. That doesn't make sense. Why would a train conductor be moving political money offshore? Because he's not a conductor, Jiggs said grimly. He's a fixer. Or worse. Sarah flipped to the last page. It was an employment verification form. Erdrich Wilson, hired 2019, background check cleared. But the signature at the bottom, that's not the same handwriting, she said. Jiggs's jaw tightened. So our man replaced the real Wilson sometime after 2019. Sarah looked up. Meaning the real conductor might already be dead. Or locked up somewhere, Jiggs said. And this guy's been wearing his skin ever since. He leaned back, rubbing his temples. It's not a train murder anymore. It's a setup. And Knowles was about to expose it. Sarah's pulse quickened. Expose what? Jiggs pointed at the donor list. These names, see this one? B. Melio. Benny Bones Melio. Knowles is head of security. Sarah's eyes widened. He was part of the transfers too? Looks like it. Knowles probably found out his own campaign funds were being laundered through his staff, confronted Thorne, maybe Wilson, and ended up dead for it. Then Jones was killed because he found out. Exactly. He saw the wrong thing, wrote the wrong name, and signed his death warrant. Sarah exhaled slowly. So who's next? Jiggs's eyes narrowed. Whoever's still breathing. At 2 a.m., the train thundered through Colorado. Snow dusted the windows like ash. Most passengers were asleep. The corridors glowed with muted amber light. Jiggs sat alone in the observation car, staring out at the mountains. His reflection looked older than he felt, gray at the temples, lines etched deep by years of other people's secrets. Sarah returned from the galley carrying 2 mugs of coffee. You should rest. Can't. Every time I close my eyes, I see that knife. She sat beside him. You ever get used to it? The blood, the lies. He shook his head. Not if you're lucky. They sat in silence a while. The only sound, the steady rhythm of the rails. Then Sarah frowned. Where's Wilson? Jiggs turned. The conductor was nowhere in sight. Normally he made his rounds every hour, checking compartments, logging timestamps. Tonight, nothing. Stay here, Jiggs said. He moved quietly down the narrow corridor, listening. The engine's hum grew louder. The front compartments were dark. He reached the conductor's room and pushed the door open, empty.
The Great Western Express lingered at Kansas City Union Station longer than scheduled. Snow dripped from the roof, forming small puddles that mirrored the flashing blue and red of police cruisers below. Jiggs Williams stood on the platform beside Sarah Meechan, both watching as uniformed officers herded the weary passengers back aboard. The investigation had stalled. Local authorities wanted the train cleared to continue west. Public pressure, they said. But Jiggs didn't like it. He never liked unfinished puzzles. He watched as Erdrich Wilson, the train's conductor, or rather, the man claiming to be Wilson, moved along the platform, clipboard in hand, checking manifests with mechanical precision. Something about the man had changed. His uniform looked the same, but his posture was different, stiffer, calculated. Sarah noticed it too. He's been avoiding eye contact all morning. Jiggs nodded. Yesterday he couldn't stop talking. Now he's mute as a stone. They boarded again. The train was half empty. Several passengers had elected to disembark after hearing of the double murder. Those who remained sat in uneasy silence, whispering over coffee and newspapers. The moment the whistle blew, the express rolled westward again, through open country and bright, cold sunlight. By noon, Jiggs decided to corner Wilson. He found him near the engine car, adjusting the air pressure valves. "Morning," Jiggs said casually. Wilson jumped slightly, then straightened. "Detective, didn't see you there." "Busy morning?" "Just keeping her running smooth. You know how these trains get after a stop. Temperamental." "Yeah," Jiggs said, "like people." Wilson smiled thinly. "Guess you could say that." Sarah appeared behind Jiggs. "Mind if we ask a few questions?" "About what?" "The night Congressman Knowles died." Wilson's hand froze on the valve lever. "I already told you everything." "Humor me," Jiggs said. "Where were you between midnight and 1? "In my quarters. I was off duty." That so? Yeah, why?
Or rather, the man who had been posing as him, eyes wild, teeth clenched, sweat freezing on his brow despite the cold. He dropped the bag and drew the pistol. "Don't!" Jiggs barked, ducking behind a rock. The gunshot cracked across the pass, echoing like thunder. Snow burst from the ground near Jiggs's feet. Sarah dove for cover beside him. "He's desperate!" she yelled. "Good," Jiggs muttered. Desperate men talk. He waited for the next shot. It didn't come. The imposter was running again, climbing toward the tree line. Jiggs bolted after him, his breath coming in short, sharp bursts. When he reached the ridge, the man had stopped. The duffel bag lay open beside him, bills scattered across the snow like fallen leaves. "End of the line," Jiggs said, gun raised. The man laughed, a broken, wheezing sound. "You don't even know what train you're on, detective. Try me." "This wasn't about politics," he said. "It was about power. You think Knowles was clean? He built his empire on dirty money. He used us all. Thorne, Melio, the donors, all of it to buy silence." "Then why kill him?" Sarah called up, her flashlight steady on his face. "Because he got greedy. He was going to sell us out to the feds. Cut a deal, leave the rest of us swinging." "Us?" Jiggs said. "Who's us?" The man smiled. "You'll never catch them. They're already on the next train." Before Jiggs could fire, the man turned the gun on himself. A single crack split the night. He fell backward into the snow. Sarah gasped. "No!" They scrambled up the slope, but it was too late. The imposter lay motionless, eyes staring blankly at the stars. Jiggs knelt beside him, searching his coat pockets. Inside, he found a leather wallet, empty save for a folded piece of paper. He opened it carefully. It was a photograph, a group of men standing beside a private jet, smiling for the camera. Simon Knowles was there. So was Roger Thorne. And standing in the middle, hand on Knowles's shoulder, was a man Jiggs didn't recognize.
Jiggs shook his head. Not even close. Tell me about Project Westline. Teresa froze. Where did you hear that name? From your friend in the snow. She stared at him for a long moment, then whispered, "You shouldn't have." "Why?" "Because Westline isn't a campaign project. It's a cover, a transport network, private, off the books, funded by Knowles's donors. They move things across the country." "Things?" She hesitated. "Weapons, data, people, anything that can't go through customs." Sarah had arrived quietly behind Jiggs, listening. "You're saying this train was part of a smuggling route?" Teresa nodded. "Every few months, one car gets swapped at a depot in Chicago. No one checks manifests. No one asks questions." Jiggs leaned back, grim. "And Knowles found out." "Yes. He was going to blow it wide open, make himself a hero before the election. But Thorne and Melio, they couldn't let that happen." Sarah frowned. "So they hired the fake conductor to handle it." Teresa's eyes glistened. "You have no idea who you're dealing with. Westline doesn't lose people. It buries them." Jiggs tapped the table. "Then they'll have to bury me deep." The train thundered west through the empty plains, a silver serpent cutting across a golden sea of wheat. Inside, the walls seemed to hum with unease, passengers whispering, staff avoiding eye contact, and the faint vibration of steel on steel like a heartbeat that wouldn't slow down. Jiggs Williams sat in the observation lounge, the photograph from the fake conductor spread out before him. Sarah stood at the bar, sipping cold coffee, eyes scanning the reflection in the glass. "You know what's funny?" Jiggs said quietly. "Every one of these faces, Knowles, Thorne, that mystery man, they're all smiling, like it was the best day of their lives." Sarah came over and leaned down. "You think Westline's still active?" "Bet on it." "Then whoever that third man is, he's the one still pulling the strings, Jiggs finished. Sarah nodded slowly. And Thorne's next on our list. Jiggs pocketed the photo and rose. Let's pay him a visit. The door was locked, but that meant little to Jiggs. He used a narrow blade to lift the latch and pushed it open. Thorne sat at the small desk, hair disheveled, a tumbler of whiskey trembling in his hand. His eyes darted up as they entered. "Detective," he said hoarsely, "I was expecting you." Jiggs gestured toward the glass. "Breakfast of champions?" Thorne gave a bitter laugh. "You'd drink too if your career was over before sunrise." Sarah crossed her arms. "Depends on who's ending it, you or whoever you're working for." Thorne sighed and stared out the window.
The campaign treasurer? He nodded. He handled the shell accounts. Knowles wanted out, said he was going to expose the network. Jones panicked. Melio, he was supposed to keep him quiet until after the election. And instead, Jiggs asked. Melio took it too far. Too far? Jiggs repeated. He shoved a butcher knife in his boss's chest. Thorne's face went gray. He was supposed to scare him, not kill him. Melio's loyal, but he's unstable. You must have seen it. Sarah frowned. And Jenny? She's pregnant with his child. Thorne's gaze hardened. That's why she's alive. He'd do anything to protect her, even if it meant cleaning up the bodies afterward. Jiggs folded his arms. Where is he now? Thorne exhaled shakily. Car 6. He's been guarding the luggage compartment since dawn. Said he needed to secure evidence. Jiggs turned to Sarah. Let's go. Thorne grabbed his arm. Detective, if you find Jones, tell him I want out. I never signed up for this. Jiggs stared at him. You signed up the moment you looked away. Then he slammed the door behind him. The narrow corridor leading to the rear of the train smelled of oil and cold steel. The rhythmic clatter beneath their feet felt heavier here, as if the express was bearing the weight of all its secrets. Sarah drew her pistol. You think Melio will talk? He'll growl first, Jiggs muttered. Then talk. Maybe. They stepped into the cargo car. Crates were stacked high against the walls, labels half peeled, the air thick with diesel and dust. At the far end, Benny Bones Melio stood with his back to them, sorting through a crate of sealed envelopes. A handgun hung loosely from his belt. Morning, Bones, Jiggs called. Melio didn't turn around. You move quiet for an old guy. Occupational hazard. Sarah stepped forward. We need to ask you a few questions about your boss. Melio chuckled. Which one? Simon Knowles. Never heard of him. Jiggs frowned. That's funny. Your fingerprints were on the knife. Melio froze. You're lying. You're right, Jiggs said. I am. But your reaction tells me plenty. The big man turned slowly, his scarred face twitching. You've got guts, detective. I'll give you that. Thanks, Jiggs said. Now tell us why you killed him. Melio's grin vanished. You don't understand. He was going to ruin everything. Jenny, the kid, all of it. Westline would have gone down, and we'd have gone with it. Sarah took a cautious step forward. So you silenced him? I protected my family, Melio roared. He yanked the gun from his belt and fired. The bullet missed Jiggs by inches, shattering a crate. He dove behind another, returning fire. Sparks flew, echoing like thunder in the metal chamber. Sarah flanked left, crouching behind a pile of luggage. Drop it, Benny. It's over. Melio snarled, eyes wild. You think this ends with me? You think Jones won't bury you too? Another shot. This one caught the edge of Sarah's jacket. Jiggs rolled out, aimed low, and fired once. Melio howled, clutching his leg as the gun clattered to the floor.
Jiggs was on him in 2 strides, kicking the weapon away and pinning him against a crate. "You're done," he said. Emilio spat blood. "You've got no idea what you're in for, Williams. Westline doesn't stop. It owns the line."
Enough to put half of DC in a cell? Sarah looked at Emilio. "Where's Jones?" He laughed through the pain. "On the next train, detective. You'll never catch him." Jiggs frowned. "You're lying." Emilio's grin widened. "Maybe." He showed them a set of sealed envelopes marked with the Department of Justice seal, extradition requests, campaign ledgers, and very inconvenient testimony from Mr. Thorne, all pointing to you, Detective Williams, as the man who sabotaged this investigation for profit. Sarah blinked. "What?" Jiggs snorted. "That's thin even for you." "It doesn't need to be thick," Jones said calmly. "It just needs to reach the right ears before you do." He checked his watch. "You should hurry, Detective. Your train leaves in 3 minutes." Before either of them could move, 2 uniformed security guards, rail police, approached. Jones handed them a file. "These 2 have been harassing passengers. Please see that they reboard safely." Jiggs's jaw tightened. "You've got nerve, Jones." "Nerve?" Jones's smile never faltered. "No, resources." He turned and walked toward a waiting black sedan. The guards blocked Jiggs and Sarah's path until the car disappeared beyond the depot gates. Back aboard the train, Sarah paced the corridor. "He's baiting us." "Worse," Jiggs said. "He's setting the stage. When we reach LA, we'll be the suspects." "Then we don't let him reach LA first." Jiggs nodded. "We get to Barstow before his people do." Sarah looked out the window as the desert slid by. "And what about the passengers? Thorne, Jenny?" "Keep them close," Jiggs said. "The second Jones's network realizes we're still breathing, they'll try to clean house." It came just after dusk. The train had entered a canyon west of Kingman, the tracks cutting through red rock and shadow. Most passengers were asleep. Sarah was reviewing files when the lights flickered and went out. The air filled with the whine of brakes, the metallic screech echoing off the canyon walls. The express shuddered to a halt. Jiggs grabbed his gun. "That's not scheduled." Sarah peered through the dark window. "What the hell?" Headlights flared ahead. A freight train sat across the main line, blocking the track. Its cars bore the same symbol from the West Line folders, a black W over silver rail. Jiggs swore. Jones's people. Figures in dark uniforms moved between the trains, 5, maybe 6, armed. One climbed aboard the baggage car. Jiggs turned to Sarah. "Get Thorne and Jenny into the observation car. Lock it down. Go!" She sprinted off. Jiggs ducked into the service corridor, waited until a silhouette appeared in the doorway, and swung the butt of his pistol. The man dropped without a sound. He grabbed the fallen man's rifle and moved forward through the narrow cars. The smell of oil and sweat filled the air. Another figure rounded the corner. Jiggs fired once, hitting metal beside the man's shoulder, forcing him back. "Williams!" a voice shouted. It was Sarah, echoing from 2 cars ahead. "They're breaching the observation car!" He ran. Bullets cracked against the walls, glass shattering as the car lurched from the impact of a rear coupling. Sparks flew. Someone screamed. Jiggs dove through the connecting door and saw Sarah crouched behind an overturned table. Thorne pressed flat against the wall, Jenny sobbing quietly. 2 gunmen advanced down the aisle. Jiggs fired twice. One dropped, the other retreated. Then silence. Steam hissed from a broken valve overhead. Sarah's voice came steady. "We can't hold this car. We have to disconnect it." Jiggs glanced toward the rear coupling. "That'll strand—" Sarah leaned against the window. "If Jones staged that ambush, he knows we'll be reporting to federal agents in LA. Which means he's already planted evidence," Jiggs said. Thorne, seated opposite, looked sick. "He warned me years ago. If the line's ever exposed, it'll burn everything on it. I thought he meant the business. He meant people." Jenny clutched her belly. "He'll come for me next." Sarah put a hand on her shoulder. "Not if we end this before he can." Jiggs stared out into the desert night. "We'll end it in Los Angeles." By the time the express reached the Los Angeles basin, the sun was high and cruel. Reporters swarmed the terminal. Police cordons lined the platform. The air buzzed with static tension. Jiggs and Sarah stepped off, weary and watchful. An agent in a gray suit approached. "Detective Williams, Agent Meechan, you're under investigation for obstruction of a federal inquiry into the death of Congressman Simon Knowles." Jiggs smiled grimly. "Guess Jones beat us here." Sarah whispered, "What now?" Jiggs looked past the agent to the far end of the platform, where Benjamin Jones stood flanked by two lawyers, shaking hands with the press. "What now?" Jiggs said quietly. "We make it public." He pulled the folded photo from his pocket, the one marked Project Westline, and held it high for the cameras. "This," he shouted, "is what your treasurer doesn't want you to see." Reporters turned. Flashbulbs erupted. Jones's smile faltered for the first time. Sarah moved fast, handing the Westline files to the nearest journalist. "Open them. You'll find evidence of blackmail, smuggling, murder. Every name that paid for silence." The crowd surged. The agents hesitated. And then from behind Jones, Roger Thorne appeared, his voice hoarse but strong. "She's right," Thorne said. "It's all true. He made us do it. All of us." Jones spun, furious. "You fool!" But it was too late. The press was shouting, cameras rolling, the truth spilling faster than any bullet could stop. Jones tried to push through the crowd, but Jiggs was there, blocking his path. "End of the line, Jones," Jiggs said softly. Jones sneered. "You think this ends here?" "No," Jiggs replied. "But you do." Jones swung a punch. Jiggs ducked, twisted his arm, and sent him sprawling against the platform rail just as LAPD officers closed in. Sarah exhaled. "That's one way to make a statement." "Public transit," Jiggs said. "Never underestimate it." That evening, the Pacific was gold under a burning sky. The last passengers of the express watched from the observation deck, the city lights of Los Angeles flickering alive below. Jiggs and Sarah stood apart from the crowd, silent. "You ever think," she said, "that we should have flown instead?" He chuckled. "Airline strikes saved us from the wrong kind of turbulence." She smiled faintly. "You think it's over?" "For now," Jiggs said. "But the line runs farther than we can see. Someone will try to rebuild it." Sarah looked out at the ocean. "Then we'll be ready." A gull screamed overhead. The sun touched the horizon, turning everything the color of blood and honey. For the first time in days, Jiggs let himself breathe. He turned to her. "Sarah? Yeah? Next time we travel cross-country. Yeah? Let's drive." She laughed, soft and real, and together they watched the sun sink into the Pacific. The express, gleaming silver in the dying light, hissed once, then fell silent.